Welcome and good evening, everyone, to tonight's webinar, While You Wait, What You Can Do Now to Prepare for Your Growing Family. My name is Chantal and I'm part of the Adopt for Life team. I am very pleased to be here as facilitator for Christina Romo's presentation. Very quick reminder before we get started, we are live streaming on our public Facebook page. So just ask you to be mindful of the information that you're putting in the comments when you're asking your questions, as any and all of that information will be available to the public. So thank you. We're joined tonight by Christina Romo, who many of you will recognize from her social media and blog, Diary of a Not So Angry Asian Adoptee. Christina is truly an expert voice for us to listen to and learn from. She herself is an adopted person. Additionally, she is a child welfare professional working to support systemic change and improvements that enable better outcomes for adoptees, for families of origin, and for adoptive families. Christina was adopted from South Korea at the presumed age of 2. She and her husband are the parents of 2 biracial sons and reside in Minnesota. She has over 15 years of experience working in child welfare and adoption. Outside of her professional roles, she has spent over 9 years sharing her experiences as an adoptee through her blog and social media platforms to help educate and support adoptive parents and advocate for adoptees. She is an author whose work has been featured in It's Not About You, Understanding Adoptee Search, Reunion, and Open Adoptions, HuffPost, The Mighty, and Good Men Project. We are privileged to have Christina with us tonight as parents and caregivers through adoption, kinship, and customary care, and those awaiting parents. Our strong ask for all of you is to be open and reflective on the insights that Christina is sharing. It's imperative that all of us be willing to challenge our own spoken and unspoken biases, including the idyllic narratives that too often surround adoption in the media, and be willing to consider the diverse experiences and needs that our children will bring with them into our families. Acknowledging, recognizing, and celebrating the racial, cultural, and community experiences and history of our children is incumbent on all of us. Growing and developing our own personal learnings before a child enters our family is the absolute least that we can and should be doing. We may be at different points in all our individual journeys, but the onus rests with all of us as parents, parents and caregivers, to nurture our children's abilities to be their full, authentic selves, honoring all parts of their history and experiences. Welcome, Christina. Thank you so much for sharing with us tonight. I'll just quickly remind everyone that Christina is staying on after the presentation, which runs about 50 minutes, to answer any of your questions during this live. So thanks again, Christina, and I'll just pass it over to you.
Okay. Thank you everyone for being here. It'll just take me a second to get this started, this video started. Sorry, it doesn't want to. Okay. This is not. Sorry about this. Okay, we're gonna do plan B. I'll try this one.
Totally practice this, by the way. So
I know, we tried it and it worked just fine earlier. Sorry about this.
we're gonna do plan B. Totally practice this.
Good. Don't know why it's not sharing. I'm not sure. I think we're gonna have just a little bit of a weird view. So
That's all right. It's the information that counts.
sorry about it. Okay. Let's cut the video and then do this.
Hello, my name is Christina Romo, and I will be presenting While You Wait, what you can do now to prepare for your growing family from an adoptee's perspective. Before we begin, I wanted to share a little bit about myself. I am an adoptee. I was adopted internationally and transracially at the presumed age of 2 from South Korea. I was adopted into the States and grew up in Minnesota in a predominantly white community. I have 15 plus years of child welfare and adoption experience, primarily working in post-adoption support, but I have worked in a variety of capacities within the fields. I consider myself an adoptee advocate, so really focusing on the needs of adoptees, both children and adults, and how best to support them. I provide a lot of support and education to adoptive parents. So again, really focusing on the needs of adoptees and helping parents to understand kind of what their child might be going through and how best to support their needs. And I am also an author. So I know that your family is now considered adopt ready. And I wanted to take a minute to just acknowledge kind of the hard work and what you've put into to get to this place. I know that you've completed the SAFE home study. I know that the home study can be just a really difficult and intrusive process that can sometimes feel a little unfair with all of the hoops that you need to kind of jump through in order to grow your family. But I do also want to acknowledge that it's been a very necessary process as well. I know that you completed the Pride training, which is that 27 hours worth of training that focused on growing your understanding of the adoption and child welfare systems and processes, child development, attachment and loss, trauma, identity formation, and birth family connections. I know that the training may have felt like a lot. It's a lot of time to put into training, but I also want to remind you that that you are preparing for the rest of your life and the rest of your child's life. And so when you think in those terms, 27 hours is really actually very little, and it's not adequate enough to really be able to position yourself to be the best support for your child. and your child's needs. So so it's really important to just be open and willing and just wanting to continue to learn. And I've found that I get a little nervous when I hear parents and professionals kind of state that they feel like they have it handled, or they know everything there is to know, or they don't feel like there's anything else out there that's that would be helpful for them to learn. And those are actually the people that I feel like really need to kind of revisit learning and need more education, because truly, I mean, needs are constantly changing, people are constantly changing. Kind of the understanding of adoptees' needs are constantly changing, and so it's just important to always learn and to never stop kind of seeking out the opportunities to learn, you know, prior to adoption, and certainly as a lifelong kind of commitment to wanting to kind of learn and grow in your understanding, and to support your your adoptee in your life, you know, in all the ways that they need. So so I know that now that you're adopt ready, I know that you're now kind of in the middle of, or just beginning kind of that waiting game. I know that you're waiting for the ARE that's going to be happening this, I believe it's in May, in the spring. And I also know that, you know, even after you attend the ARE, there's going to be quite a process of that goes into kind of that matching process. So so there's a lot of ambiguity in knowing kind of how long the process will take from here, and and how the matching process will really go. So I wanted to kind of acknowledge kind of just the difficulty of kind of being in a place of having done a lot of work already, and just really wanting this for your family so badly, and kind of not having a clear vision as to how long it will take, and how much will need to go in, how much more will need to go into this process to kind of reach that point of welcoming a child or teen into your home and your family, and then working towards finalizing the adoption. So I really feel like, though it's a difficult time, you know, this waiting period can be really difficult, it's also an opportunity for you to really focus heavily on doing what you can to prepare for the realities of adoption, doing what you can to really focus on building connections for your family, and to focus on doing more of the work that's needed around addressing your own trauma, addressing and being responsive to the trauma of your child, and just what their various needs are around, you know, their identities and their diagnoses and things like that. So so these suggestions are heavily based on kind of what I, as an adoptee, kind of feel is really important, but also also this incorporates kind of the knowledge that I've gained from working with youth who experience foster care and may not have been able to achieve permanency within the system, but upon aging out, you know, we're able to kind of define and create what permanency meant for them, and to find that in their lives. Also working with adoptees, both young and old, and with adoptive families as well. So so the first area of focus is on relationship and communication. I do want to acknowledge the fact that I know that some of you may have entered into this process on your own, and some of you may have entered this process with a parenting partner. So I do want to kind of acknowledge that relationship doesn't mean just within your home, but also your family outside of your home, your friends, and community members as well. I think it's really, really vital for you to be as secure as possible in these areas before welcoming a child into your home. I found, just from the family work especially, that communication is really the one aspect of any relationship that always needs work. I think even families who feel the most secure in their ability to communicate both verbally and non-verbally with each other have struggled, after post-adoption, and just with the realities and things that can arise when you're parenting a child who has experienced a lot of trauma and loss. And so it's really important to be just constantly thinking about and working on your ability to communicate, and also your ability to pick up on what other people are trying to communicate to you. When you are parenting a child, it's important to be able to effectively and just clearly communicate with them about kind of what they need and what you need, and also to be really attuned to what they're communicating to you through their verbals and nonverbals, and knowing that what they may be verbally communicating to you may actually mean something different, and it may be honing in on a different area of need that's not being met. And so it's important to really be strong in your ability to communicate and pick up on what other people are communicating to you. And it's important to focus on working on your own trauma. I think this is an area where it can kind of blindside parents, and the reality is that when you're parenting a child or teen who has experienced trauma and loss, it can trigger your own past traumas, and these can be traumas that were maybe just very acute and potentially just very small, and just not, like, for you it may not have felt very significant at all, and it may be something that you thought you worked through and that you're just fine with, or it can be traumas that have had a really profound impact on your life. And the reality is that when you are bearing witness to the trauma of a child that you're caring for, and that you're also trying to meet the needs of a child or teen who has experienced trauma, it is very, very common for this to really bring up things from your past that you may have thought you've already dealt with, or you may not have thought were a big deal, but in the moments, they do end up kind of really impacting you pretty profoundly in the parenting that you're trying to do. So I think it's really important at this stage, even before you have a child in your home, to identify a therapist or counselor for yourself and get into the routine of working with them on a regular basis. I am not completely clear on kind of how it works in Canada, but I know, like, in the US, like, it can take a while for you to connect with kind of a specialty care kind of provider, and then especially with therapists, like, the work is just so personal, and it can really profoundly impact kind of the way that you see and experience the world, that that you may connect with one therapist and find that they're not the best fit for you, and then you find that you need to kind of enter that process again of finding another therapist, and trying to connect with someone that you really kind of vibe with and that you feel like understands you and can meet your needs in the way that you need them to. And so I think it's really important to work through that process before you have a child in your home. What I've found is that there are many parents who decide to kind of wait on that, or don't kind of feel like they need to see a therapist on a regular basis. There may be kind of that stigma, or just kind of various beliefs that they have around having and working with a therapist. And so what often happens is that they haven't connected to a therapist, and then they encounter a situation where they're in crisis, and they really need that level of support, but then they're having to try to work through this process of finding a therapist and finding a therapist who's the right fit for them, in the midst of working through crisis as well. And so it can be just a really unfortunate situation, and a really challenging situation to be in, when you're really in a traumatized place, and you don't have that support kind of readily available to you, and you're having to kind of work through kind of all the red tape, and jump through all the hoops again to just get the support that you need. So it's important to already have that in place for yourself, and that routine of working with them it can be just you are meeting with them like once a month, or you might be meeting with them on a more regular basis. And a benefit of doing that too is that therapists can help you kind of identify what some of your past traumas are, and where they may be triggered as you parent. And so that would also be a really important benefit, to be able to kind of work through that prior to a child or teen joining you in your home. And I've another thing to kind of think about is the fact that what can sometimes happen is that in the midst of your child's trauma and all the ways that it can manifest, it sometimes happens where because a parent is so triggered by their child's trauma, that the child ends up in a position of having to not only work through their own trauma, but also hold their parents' trauma as well. And so it's just a really unfair kind of position to put your child in. So the more that you're able to kind of focus on you and working through all of that as early as possible, or as soon as possible, I think it's the better, and it'll be better for your family as a whole for you to do that now. And another area to kind of look at is kind of the culture and the rules of your household. This is something that you may have already done a bit in your home study. And some areas to kind of think about are just, what are the rules of your family in your household? What are implied and what are explicit? What are some of the negotiables and non-negotiables? What are some of the norms and routines of your family? And it's important to also kind of pay close attention to areas of rigidity. I really focus heavily on this area because it's for a variety of reasons. I think Often when a child joins a family, they're often expected to kind of adjust to and assimilate into their family, rather than having the parents adjust to fit the child's needs, which is really the ideal situation. And and it can sometimes be easy to forget about the traumas and the lived experiences of your child, and forget that it's not necessarily easy for them to come into yet another home if they've had multiple placements, and believe that they're they'll be accepted and that they'll belong, and that they'll be safe in whatever that means for them. And so with this area, it can be helpful in that, I am a big believer in the listening, and embracing kind of the voice and decisions of your child or teen. So being able to kind of incorporate kind of their what their wants and what their needs are within your rules, is really helpful. Like, helping, like giving them space to be able to help develop some of the rules for your family as well. And they can just be, they can just be silly rules too. I mean, it can just be like, well, on Fridays we're going to have pizza night, or or something like that. And it doesn't have to be kind of um, uh, these really important rules, but they are rules that are likely going to be important to your child. So it's important to just, whenever possible, to really incorporate kind of the voice of your child into decisions and into different different areas in your household and your family's life. This can really help with your child's sense of belonging and acceptance, just knowing that their voice matters within your home and that they are being heard within your home. um, and also just, especially with children and teens who have experienced multiple placements, they were constantly having to adjust to new rules, to new cultures within different placements, and it can be confusing, and it can be really difficult to have a rule be one way in one placement, and then a rule be another way in a different placement. And while you're still trying to adjust to kind of this shift in rules, you end up kind of getting in trouble for kind of defaulting to the rules that you were used to in your previous placement that don't necessarily apply to your new placement. So there's just a lot of confusion that can happen there. And also just in child welfare and adoption, there are just so many decisions that are being made for children and teens. And there's so little control that they have over all of these decisions that are being made for them. So being able to help your child feel like they have some control and some autonomy over kind of what some of the rules are, and kind of what is going to help them feel a little safer within your home and your family, is going to be really important. And this is also an area where it's really important to just acknowledge and kind of work around your issues with rigidity, because your child will likely be pretty hypersensitive to kind of what those areas are, and those could end up being kind of a source of just power and control kind of conflict. And so if the more that you're able to get to a place of being flexible, the better for your child, for your family as a whole. Another area to really focus on is working on building and strengthening your village. Most families, come into this process having already created and claimed, kind of this community of support that they have in their lives, and so and I've seen families who have very large, villages and very large support systems, and the reality is that support systems often change pretty drastically after adoption, and what we often see is that your support system will be really excited and want to be super supportive of your growing your family, and then not necessarily understanding kind of what the realities are and kind of how trauma may manifest and kind of what the various needs that your child may have are, and because of that they may start to kind of pull away after they kind of start seeing kind of some of those realities manifest. Like they may not know what to say, or they may not know how to help, and they may have kind of their own fears and biases around kind of what's happening, and so they just pull away, and so it's very, very common for support systems to just really change and really get a lot smaller after adoption happens. And sometimes it's the decision of people within your support system. Sometimes it needs to be your decision as well. Part of being a parent is really identifying kind of who is safe for your child to be around, and you'll likely find that there are going to be people within your extended family, within your friends, within your community who may because of maybe values or biases that they have, may not be the best kind of people to have in your child's life. So there are definitely situations where you may need to kind of distance yourself from people that may have been just a really vital source of support in your life, but the needs just of your family have changed, and the focus of your family has changed, and what isn't good for your child may no longer be good for your family. So there's just a lot of kind of difficult decisions that may be made there, or may need to be made there. It's important to spend this time, just educating your family and friends and community members, especially those who may have the most contact with their child, educating them about the realities of adoption, educating them about trauma, certainly the diverse identities of your child or teen. So focusing on race and culture and LGBTQ plus identities, and just a lot of different kind of opportunities for education for them. But now's a really good time to kind of work to help your family, friends, and community members to do their own work, so that they can be a good support for your child and for your family as a whole. Now's a really good time to work on developing relationships with other adoptive families. There's just something to be said about that peer support, and having support people that you can turn to who really get it, and in those moments where you are just maybe really struggling, and you're kind of in this place of just loving your child so much but not really liking them in the moment, and just being able to kind of verbalize that to someone who just gets it and won't judge you for the way that you're feeling and for what you're going through, and have been through it, so they understand kind of what your unique needs might be. It's just so important, and also for your child to have those connections with other children and teens who have been adopted, and may have similar lived experiences, and to just kind of be with people like their peers, where they can just be. They don't have to explain themselves. They don't have to worry about kind of how their different mannerisms, or or behaviors or whatever may reflect on other people. I mean, just being able to be around people where they can just be their authentic selves, and know that um, they'll be accepted and embraced. There's just a lot of value in that for children and teens as well. So another area to really look into is researching post-adoption supports. It would be really helpful to just kind of look into what post-adoption supports and resources are available and accessible to your family in your area, and also just on a greater scale. So if there are kind of information hubs, or kind of go-to places where you can go for kind of training, or just articles on your family's unique needs, it's really helpful to kind of identify what your go-to resources will be before your child or teen comes into your home. And it's also important to kind of have those resources be diverse, so you're not kind of getting your information kind of within an echo chamber, and you're able to have access to a variety of different resources and topic-based information from a variety of different perspectives. That's really important. And it's also important, if available and if you're able to, consider joining waiting family groups or other adoptive family groups that are available to adopt-ready families, so families who have completed their home study and are licensed. And that, again, that kind of goes back to building and strengthening your village, and just kind of forming connections with families who have been there or are there already, that can really kind of provide you with support from people who just get it in a way that non-adoptive families won't. So that's really important. And to also just normalize the utilization of post-adoption supports is just really important. And just if you've already incorporated it into your family and into your family's lives, it's really helpful to just have those supports and resources kind of at your ready, especially in times when things are just really more intense, or if you're in crisis, being able to just kind of have those go-to resources just available is just really helpful. It's also helpful to look into respite opportunities. So researching respite providers, and they don't need to be necessarily strangers to you. They can also be family and friends who can provide respite as well. And respite is kind of a tough thing for some families. It's some families may kind of feel like using respite may kind of come off as the fact that you can't do it on your own, or you can't, or just that it's selfish that you're taking a break, or kind of things like that. And the reality is that everybody needs a break from each other. And I think, especially kind of during the pandemic, I think a lot of us have kind of realized the importance of kind of just having your own space for a minute, and being able to um, have breaks from each other. I think it's just really, really needed, not only for parents but for kids as well. So being able to kind of identify who some of those respite supports may be is helpful, and just remembering that respite can look very different. Like um, it may be like a dance rehearsal, or it may be, or a dance class, or it may be um, maybe like a friend just stopping by and taking your kid out for ice cream, just giving you like an hour or so of a break. Or it may be grandparents who are having your child stay with them for the night. Or the more that you're able to kind of normalize it and work it into your routine, like just off the bat, the more helpful it will be. um, um, some of the challenges that kind of come into play with respite is, if it's not normalized within your family's routine, sometimes it can be seen as a punishment for your child, or that your child may kind of feel like they're being sent away because they did something wrong, and that's not the purpose of respite. And so if it's just something that your child is used to doing, like they know that they go to their grandparents like every weekend, and it's just part of their routine, it won't feel like it won't feel like a punishment to them. um, and it's not, because it can be really difficult for them if it's something that you're doing, or that you're leaning on in moments of crisis, where they may have their trauma may have manifested in just a really tough way, and then all of a sudden they're having to spend the night at somebody else's house, and just how that feels for them, it can feel really, really scary, because they don't know if they're going to be able to come back, or if you're thinking about kind of having them leave, or they've just had um, so much just ambiguity in their lives, and just so much uncertainty in their lives, that respite can sometimes be a difficult thing for them if not done in an appropriate way. Also, another thing to maybe think about is if it's safe to do so. And I know we're in the middle of a pandemic, so I know it's not necessarily completely feasible right now, but exploring the possibility of providing respite, or babysitting for your friends or family, or possibly like another adoptive family while you're waiting. And just what this does is just give you an opportunity to kind of experience being around and caring for a variety of different kind of children and teens with different kind of personalities and temperaments and needs. And it can just, I know that for some parents, I mean, even just wanting this so badly, but not having had experience of being a parent, it can be just such a culture shock, and just such a different experience to one day not have a child in your home, and the next day having a child in your home. So the more that you're able to kind of have these experiences of being around kids, and being around kids who may have different needs, or different personalities and things like that, it will only help kind of enrich your ability to be a parent once you've been matched with a child or teen. So another thing to really focus on is really diving deeper into the learning and exploration around some of the different challenges and diagnoses that may manifest in children who have experienced trauma and loss. So you may need to it may be helpful to kind of do more research around like FASD and what that looks like and how that's how you can kind of meet the needs of a child or teen who has an FASD diagnosis. And also, looking into, ASD, like attachment, and also kind of sexual reactivity in children and teens, kind of what that can look like and how to keep your child and your family safe. Also looking at kind of boundaries and things like that. And those are kind of important areas to kind of research. Also working on becoming more aware of and responsive to your child or teen's trauma, grief, and loss. Just all the ways that you can position yourself to be able to parent through that trauma-informed lens is going to be really helpful. And so I know that there's a lot of different trainings and research out there that can really help you grow in your understanding and help you better prepare for meeting those needs. Also really delving into kind of your child or teen's identities that they may have, or so like their the race, culture, and LGBTQ plus identities, and just kind of doing a further kind of and deeper exploration of those identities, issues that may arise, and kind of how to support their needs, how to kind of honor and affirm their needs and identities, and how to help them feel really accepted in who they are, and who they choose to, who they love, and how they express themselves, and everything like that. I think that's really important. Also taking the opportunity to kind of grow in the connections that you have to the diverse communities as well, because it will be important for you to be that bridge into your child's kind of diverse communities. So if you have connections already, and like really meaningful connections already in the communities, it will really help your child develop those connections as well, and develop really meaningful and lifelong connections. It's going to be just so vital for them. So it's not just about kind of mirrors and representation, but really focusing on those connections. And it's important to take this time to do more work and introspection around your own biases. I think sometimes parents can find that they have felt very open to parenting a child or teen with any needs or any identities, but then when faced with the reality of what those needs are and what is needed to support those needs, not really being able to do the work, or sometimes not being willing to do the work. And so if you're able to really focus on kind of and figure out what your biases are now, and start doing that work now, it's going to be really important. And that includes kind of where you lie in kind of social justice issues and things like that. So all of that will be really important. Kind of acknowledging and doing that work around your biases will also help with birth family connections as well, because a lot of times those biases can really kind of arise and impact kind of your ability to form meaningful connections and support the connections of your child with their first family and their communities. And so it's important to really kind of do that work for a variety of reasons. It's also important to help your family, friends, and community members, especially those that will come into the most contact with your child, to do that work as well. And and in doing so, it will also kind of help you identify who may need a little bit more support and education, and who may necessarily not be the safest for your child to connect with or to come in contact with. So so there's just a lot of layers that that kind of fall in those areas of exploration and research. So a really important area to focus on is, I mean, they're all important, but I think it's an area that isn't paid attention to as much, but just learning from the adoption constellation. So really normalizing kind of seeking out resources and seeking out opportunities to hear the voices and lived experiences of the various members of the adoption constellation. And I've kind of shied away, or I'm moving away from kind of using the term adoption triad because it's so much bigger than that. And so adoption constellation really kind of holds space for the many intersectionalities that exist kind of within the different identities and the different roles and connections that we have to adoption. And I think it's just especially important to give space to and learn from and truly hear from adult adoptees, and remember that they are the voices of your child grown up. So so the issues and and the things that they may be struggling right now are likely things that your child may or already be struggling with, but they may not be able to verbalize to you. And so adoptees can be a really, really helpful and insightful resource for parents. I do want to acknowledge that sometimes the messages can be really, really tough, but they are very important. It's important to kind of to hear the trauma. It's important to hear the messages of what can happen when your needs aren't met by your parents, or what makes a difference for adoptees when their needs are met, and just a variety of just different layers and information that you can really gather from hearing from adoptees. So I highly recommend kind of seeking out opportunities to learn from adoptees as well. And I do, like, all of this is to, I personally kind of just feel really passionate about encouraging parents to do as much preparation, as much learning, and as much connection forming as possible prior to welcoming a child into their home, but also continuing that work after they have grown their family. And I think the reality is that even the most prepared families, or families who maybe have adopted previously and have lived experience with it, with the realities of it, nothing, like you really don't know until you know. So there's a lot of work that you put into preparing for adoption, and kind of growing in your understanding of what the issues are, and the reality is that it's that you may not always remember kind of what you've learned in different situations, but just having that knowledge base, it will even help you kind of with the introspection or the repair that maybe needs to happen after maybe a difficult kind of situation, or maybe there was a situation where you and your child maybe gotten, to a verbal argument or, or something like that. And so being able to kind of fall back on what you've learned already, and being able to do that introspection and kind of get to a place of kind of understanding where your child may be coming from, and where you may be able to kind of do things a little bit differently. And yeah, and so just being able to just really kind of support your child in different ways, just based on kind of the work that you've done in the front end and the work that you continue to do. So but I do kind of encourage you to continue just seeking out opportunities for trainings, for articles, blogs, podcasts. There's just so much information out there, and it's just a matter of you kind of reaching out and just accessing that information. So so I do want to I know that after this training we'll do a bit of a Q&A, but I also want to continue to be a resource if helpful. And so I've provided my email address here, and also links and information for my blog and Facebook and Instagram. I would say that Facebook is really where I'm the most active and where the most learning can happen, and there's just a lot of opportunities to have discussions with other parents, and kind of within that space, and hopefully feel relatively safe to be able to do that. And so so I if you feel like it will be valuable for you, to just wanted to provide you with that information about where you can find me. So so thank you so much for being here, and for taking this opportunity to really learn from maybe a different perspective that you may not have been able to get from the other trainings that you've completed already. So.
Thank you. Thanks, Christina. So many really good suggestions in that whole presentation. So like Christina said, and like I said earlier, we're sticking around for a little bit. So if you have any questions, I'm watching the chat, so you can pop those in there and we can pass them along to Christina. I'm sure she'll do her best that she can to answer them as best she can. So far a lot of comments, Christina, just acknowledging and thanking you for many of the suggestions that you included in the presentation tonight. I think one of them that was earlier on was about identifying a therapist or a counselor, like before, like for yourself as the parent, to establish that that relationship and that routine in your life, so it's there as a support before some type of crisis happens. I mean, I think that is a really, really valuable piece, valuable suggestion. And I think also another point that you brought up was about doing a lot of research. And I think for a lot of the Adopt for Life community parents, like they know, sure they know, if they don't know, I'm going to plug it now. On our website, we have a resource library. And I mean, you can search by topic, you can search, by if you want to read blogs, or if you want to watch webinars, or if you want to learn more about attachment or openness or FASD. It's a great place to start that learning process. And like you said, it's an ongoing, lifelong journey. Everyone's saying thank you. So just, I mean, some of this, someone just came late, so they might have missed some of the information. So you can reach out to Christina if there's certain aspects of the presentation you missed. This person was asking a bit about how to better prepare and understand the possible trauma that the child has experienced, and particular conditions like FASD. I mean, I'll let you take that, but I think, you know, what we were just talking about is just going out there and doing that research. Like, the internet is amazing. But maybe you could point them in more specific, like, you know, areas that they could look into that.
Sure. I mean, some of my go-to resources for learning about trauma. I mean, Dr. Bruce Perry is a really great resource. He has a number of books out, and I think Heather Forbes, her Beyond Consequences books have been really really important as well, and really helpful. They give some really good ideas, kind of hands-on ideas of how you can uh, recognize the trauma and also meet the needs of your child as well. I think it's also important to think about when you do enter the matching process. It's really important to ask questions. I mean, I think some parents are just so eager to just, you know, have a match and get through the process as quickly as possible, that they don't ask the questions about what their child, or what the child that they've been matched with has experienced, and really really put that onus on, you know, the workers and the people that know the child. But it's really good to just ask any question that may come up, and don't be afraid of asking the questions, because those are often the questions that you wish you had asked later on. So so I think that's a really really big piece as well. So
That's great. Thank you. I also wanted to highlight that part where you suggested things that they can do while they're waiting, is seeking out the various voices of the adoption constellation. And I think for a lot of the families in the community, Adopt for Life community, they know, like, based on if they follow our social media, which I hope they do, that we do, you know, provide, you know, or try to, anyway, that is our goal, to really provide the various voices and lived experience. I was also going to shamelessly plug another one of our webinars, which is next week, where we're having a panel. It's called Navigating Relationships, and the panel will be comprised of an adult adoptee, a birth parent, an adoptive parent, as well as two mental health counselors that are part of the Adopt for Life mental health committee. So I think that's, you know, right there is a great way for people to, you know, have the opportunity to listen to those different voices. I was going to say, like, well, where should people go, like, if they want to find, but, you know, you kind of cleared that up at the end. They can definitely check out your Facebook page and go out there. And I think that's the point, is sometimes you can't always wait for people to tell you where to find things. Like, you have to sort of take that onus onto yourself and go out and find those connections, find those relationships that are going to really help support your family.
and surprisingly, this shouldn't be the case, but it is. It's not always the easiest to find adoptee blogs and resources, because the adoptee voice has not typically been, like, historically been centered in the conversation. You'll often, like, if you even just do a search for adoption resources, it'll be primarily from the adoptive parent perspective. So so it's helpful to identify a few adoptees, and a lot of us, we have links on our websites and blogs to other adoptee blogs as well. So some really good resources are Angela Tucker has really good website. Jaron, she has Harlow's Monkey, which is a really, really great website or blog. Dear Adoption, they're no longer active, but there's a ton of really, really great content there, and they have a really comprehensive list as well. And I could go on and on and on, to be honest. Hey TRA is great too, Hannah Matthews, and definitely look around at not just blogs, but look at Instagram, look at Facebook, and Twitter too. You'll find that some adoptees are, and some other voices in the constellation are more active on different platforms than just on their blog. So it's good to kind of do a very comprehensive search for different resources. So.
Great, those are amazing suggestions. Thank you. I do have another question. I'll pass it on to you. So this question is more about how to prepare the physical space for the child that will be coming into the family home. Any suggestions on things that would make them feel more comfortable? So, I mean, I'm sure it depends, varies, but if you want to try and tackle that one.
I mean, I always recommend to have the basics there. So of course, have a bed, have some, stuffed animals, regardless of age, and just places for them to kind of keep their things that are very valuable to them, and then leave it to your child or teen to kind of pick out the room colors, pick out if there's a window in the room, pick out the drapes, and like the bedding, so they can, if they have a favorite character, have them help kind of pick out that as well. And it just it helps them to gain some ownership over kind of their space, and to know that this is something that they helped create for themselves. And there certainly are children and teens who have not had a room to themselves. So to be able to have their own space and to be able to kind of call the shots on what it might look like is really important. Yeah, so sorry, I lost my train of thought. But
yeah, no, and I think that ties back to the very beginning where you were talking about giving them that voice, right? So that they feel that they're a part of it and they have some control and autonomy, their lives, because they had.
And
yeah. Go ahead.
I just remembered those. And so another thing to kind of keep in mind is the belongings that your child or teen come to your home with. There's, for many youth who are in care, they have very minimal number of items, and they've often lost items that have been very meaningful to them. So it's really important to be honoring and respectful of the items that they bring to your home. I mean, even if there's a blanket with a bunch of holes in it or things like that, it may seem like just a blanket that needs to be tossed to you, but that may be everything for your child. So it's important to ask those questions of them before you get rid of any of their items. I also recommend if they outgrow items, it's a good idea to maybe keep those items in a box, like in an attic or somewhere that they can maybe go back to if they want to or need to, because you don't know kind of when that need for the certain item that may kind of bring them comfort will kind of come up again. So it's important to not just kind of, I know that it's hard to have a lot of clutter around, but it's important to not do just like a clean sweep of their items without having conversations and having them involved in that process, and knowing that that they may need to go back to those items again in the future. So
that's great. I think that's really insightful. So thank you. Thanks for that. See any other questions popping up at the moment? So maybe we'll give people another minute or two, see if they have any other questions. And what I'll do, I'll also add your, for maybe the people who didn't see the end of the presentation, or I'll make sure to add your social media links in the comments as well. So for those parents that want to learn more, like you said, on your Facebook page, you're really active and there's a lot of engagement there. And they could, you know, listen and learn and see what other, you know, voices have to say. So that's, I think that was really good. I think you said something about not placing yourself in an echo chamber, something like really surrounding yourself with different perspectives and different opinions. Another great insight. Well, I think that's
just one other resource to maybe look into. I know that sometimes videos in the US don't always work in Canada.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that this will work, but there's an organization in Michigan, it's called Spalding for Children, and they partnered with a number of different organizations and with Dr. Perry to develop, it's called Core Right Time videos. They call it Core Teen, but the content is applicable and really helpful for all ages. But it's about, I think it's 8 different videos. They're about 30 minutes long on a number of different topics, including trauma and like sexual orientation and attunement and things like that. But it has actually been one of the best trainings I've ever seen in my years of working in child welfare. So it might be a really good resource to check out as well. So. Okay, perfect. And I will be sure to put that link in the comments as well after the fact, so it'll be easy for people to access, and fingers crossed that we'll have access to those videos. Maybe I'll check it out before I post it. Yeah. All right, well, I think we're going to leave it at that for tonight. So a huge thank you to all of you out there watching for all your comments, and we really appreciate you. And a big thank you to Christina for taking the time to put all this information together and being here tonight to present it. It's really appreciated, Christina. You're going to be back though. You're coming back next month. May 19th, Christina's coming back presenting for the Adopt for Life community, what adoptive parents need to know from the adoptee perspective. So we're going to be sharing more details about that event in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned. You won't want to miss it. So I'll wish everybody a very good night. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Okay, bye.